Last season, the Atlanta Hawks were arguably the most surprising team in the NBA. They finished with a top 5 record in the Eastern Conference, and when it came down to playoff time, most people expected them to lose in the first or second round. Surprisingly, in the first round, they gentlemen swept the New York Knicks. Then in the second round, they beat the Philadelphia 76ers in 7 games, and in the third round, they lost to the eventual championship Milwaukee Bucks in only 6 games. And going into the season, a lot of people were expecting the Hawks to be like at the same level as they were last season, or maybe even be better since they are a young team. Basically, we were expecting good things out of them. But so far this season, the Hawks have definitely been one of the more disappointing teams in the whole NBA. As at the making of this video, they currently have a record of 14-16, and they're currently the 11th seed, meaning that if the NBA season ended right now, they wouldn't even make the play-in tournament, which is very surprising. And this has led me to make this video where I'll be discussing what I think is going wrong with the Atlanta Hawks so far this season. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out. The first and biggest problem with the Atlanta Hawks right now has to be their defense, and I'm not going to sit here and act like the Hawks were some amazing defensive team last season. Although in the playoffs they had several moments being really good on defense, but last season they were only a slightly below average defense, and when you consider how elite they were on offense, that was definitely good enough to be a good team in the NBA. But so far this season, they're literally the 5th worst defense in the NBA, and that's simply not going to cut it. You can't be a good team in the NBA if your defense is just that atrocious. The only reason they're not like one of the worst teams in the NBA is because their offense has been fantastic this season, as they're the 2nd best offense in the league so far this season. But you have to realize that even though they're doing so good in offense, there's still a few games below 500, which has to be concerning. When you look at this roster, it's not a roster that you would expect to be a top 5 defense, not even a top 10 defense, maybe not even above average defense. When you look at the defensive talent on this roster, you would think they can at least be an average to like a slightly below average defense. They have quality defenders like Clint Capella, who's one of the best defensive centers in the NBA, John Collins, who's a solid defender for his position, DeAndre Hunter, who's one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA, Cam Reddish, who at times look like a really good defender. But then when you look at the rest of this roster, they have a bunch of guys who are below average defenders and some guys who are real life liabilities on defense. As we know, Trae Young is one of the worst defenders in the NBA, especially when it comes to one-on-one defense. Even though he gives a bit of effort, he's just too small. They also have Lou Williams, who's a liability on defense. He's way too small and not really like athletic like that. Danilo Gallinari is definitely a liability because he's just too slow when it comes to guard and perimeter players at this point in his career. And Bogdan Bogdanovic is occasionally a solid defender, but on some nights he's a pretty bad one. So to be honest, I think this team has to add more defensive players and just hope that they can get DeAndre Hunter back because he's been gone most of the season. But defense definitely has been the biggest reason the Hawks have been so terrible this season. Another reason the Hawks haven't been as good this season as we were expecting them to be is the fact that several of their key players have missed a significant amount of time. By far their biggest loss has to be DeAndre Hunter, who's only played like 11 out of the possible 29 games so far this season. Basically, he's missed like 18 games, and in my opinion, I think DeAndre Hunter is this roster's 2nd best player when he's fully healthy. The only problem is he's basically not healthy, like ever healthy. He's obviously a big deal to this team because he's their best perimeter scorer outside of Trae Young. He's also their best perimeter defender, and he's a guy who could take pressure off of Trae Young to score the ball. But him missing more than half the year definitely isn't helping them. Then guys like Bogdan Bogdanovic has missed like 9 games, and he's one of their top scorers. And even though 9 games might not sound like a lot, they've only played like 30 games so far this season, so that him missing 9 games is like more than a quarter of the season. Lou Williams has also missed like 5 games, which is a significant amount of time when you've played like 30 games in the season. Gorgui Dieng has also missed like 5 games. and their rookie, well, he's not a rookie anymore, but their second-year player in Onyeka Okongwu has literally only played one game this season. And I feel like their main players, like missing so much games, has really messed up their chemistry, because last season the Hawks just had terrific chemistry, but the chemistry just doesn't seem the same this season. To be honest, I don't think this is the biggest reason for the Hawks struggling, because many other teams have been impacted by injuries way harder than the Hawks, but I do think it has something to do with their struggles. I would just hope by like February or March they could be fully healthy, kind of like what happened last time, like last season when they were going to the playoffs, because for most of the year they actually weren't healthy, but then as soon as playoff time came, they like magically became healthy. The third reason I think the Hawks have been really struggling so far this season is the fact that they have been one of the worst fourth quarter teams in the NBA. A lot of the games that the Hawks have lost have been close games where the game was basically decided in the fourth quarter, and a lot of times in the fourth quarter their offense has just completely fallen off a cliff as they just constantly brick shots, things like that. It doesn't help that they absolutely suck on defense now. They can't get any stops to save their life down the stretch of games. I promise you, sometimes teams will just score 5 times in a row against their sorry defense. Last season, the Hawks were actually a pretty good fourth quarter team. I don't really know why they're bad this year, but I do think it's an underratedly big reason for them not being good, because it's not like the Hawks are getting blown out every single game. 8 of the Hawks' 15 losses so far this season have been close games going into the fourth quarter, but they just blow the lead, or they just can't like overcome the deficit. So if they could somehow figure out how to improve their offense or defense going into the fourth quarter, that would obviously help them get a few wins, because if their fourth quarter offense could be even a little bit better, they'd be a bit over 500 right now. To conclude the video, the Hawks have definitely been really disappointing so far this season, and to be honest, I don't really hear that much people like talking about how disappointing they've been. They've been talking about the Celtics or the Lakers, but to be honest, I'm not really that like concerned about them. Like, I'm a little bit concerned, but I still think the Hawks have the talent to be one of the better teams in the East and give literally any team like a run for its money in a playoff series. I think they just got to put it together, get a fully healthy roster, and fix up their defense. But I do expect them at some point to go on like a long winning streak, show us the team that they're capable of being. I still don't think they're a team you don't want to face them in the playoffs. They just have so much guys who could go off. I don't really think they're gonna make the playoff, like miss the playoffs. I'm not concerned about that, but I can't lie, they haven't been amazing. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you're worried about the Atlanta Hawks. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, to reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.